Hello, and welcome to the Apex Hours session on OmniStudio called Successful Interactions with OmniScripts. My name is Gabriel Ostolaza. They call me Gabo, and I am a Salesforce certified instructor working for Trailhead Academy. That's my email address, and I teach all the classes from SFI, Salesforce Industries, as well as the ADX 201 administrator class for Salesforce. I'm going to talk today about how to build a simple OmniScript or basic functionality of an OmniScript. And to put that in context, we will think that OmniStudio is divided into digital experience, front-end tools, and service management, back-end tools. So the OmniScript is included in the digital experience side, and it's normally launched from a console. The console is going to have FlexCards that one of my peers has already covered in other sessions. And within the actions of those FlexCards, we're going to launch OmniScripts, right? Those could be simple OmniScripts, or they could be more complex OmniScripts. Now, all of those FlexCards, simple and complex OmniScripts, are going to be feeding data from our data tools, integration procedures, data raptors, HTTP action, REST calls, etc. Apex classes. Now, how do OmniScripts relate to those FlexCards? Well, we have different options to add actions. We could add just buttons, like for this edit contact OmniScript that is going to be launched from this button, or we can develop menus to minimize the space used in my FlexCard. So the edit account, that is the sample that we're going to build later on as a demo, it's going to be the first OmniScript launched from this menu. The other one is going to be a more complex OmniScript launched from change contact link. And then in this other card, we also have an action that is going to launch the edit case OmniScript. So what is an OmniScript? An OmniScript is basically a guided process. It's a process that is going to guide a user through a certain of business requirements. OmniScripts can be compared to ScreenFlows somehow, and they both have a certain number of characteristics. They're guided interactions, they have branching logic, they can read data from Salesforce or write, call Apex, use custom Lightning Web Components embedded, etc. However, the OmniScript is more thought from the point of view of an external user following this business process, somebody who is not an expert on Salesforce, which is not savvy in Salesforce, right? And ScreenFlows are thought from the point of view of a process, okay? And they have simplified components. They are probably not as rich in the UI, user interface, user experience, as the ones for OmniScript. And the integration with external data sources, it's a little weaker or a little more complicated to achieve. Now, as a summary, we would say that if you are facing an external customer or partner, you will prefer to develop OmniScripts. If you are facing an employee, probably your first approach will be to go for flows, ScreenFlows. However, of course, if you have deployed an industry, SFI, okay, you might prefer to use OmniScripts. Why? Because we have quite a lot of out-of-the-box components, plus we have an industry process library that you can leverage that contains a lot of OmniScripts already pre-built. Now, types of OmniScript elements, there are 6 types, and they are all appearing on the build tab of the OmniScript designer. You have actions, display, function, groups, inputs, and OmniScript, reusable OmniScripts. So you can embed parent into a child into a parent. Now, those categories were important in the previous version, but now we have a search button that is wonderful that we're going to use in the demo, and you will see that you can search each element by its name, and it's going to appear in the proper category. So how do we drag the components into my process? Just by a simple drag and drop. So you select them from your build tab, and then you drag and drop them. For example, here we have a step, right? Before the step, we need an element, an action that is going to bring data into the step. And that's what we call an integration procedure. Once you have, or the user has entered some data for modifying or adding data into Salesforce or an external source, you need an integration procedure that takes that data, modified, and save it. And then we have a last action for navigating the user to the console where he launched this OmniScript from. Now, the OmniScript designer starts with a header where we are going to see the type, subtype, and language that are the unique identifiers of this OmniScript, plus the version. We can have a limited number of versions. Only one can be active at a time. Okay. Then we have the name. The name of the OmniScript only identifies the version, right? So each version is going to have or can have a different name. And then you have some actions on the top, like the design action that is going to toggle with preview. So you click on preview, you come to this preview, and then you click on design, you go back to design mode. And then you can add new version, or you can deactivate the current version. Now, in preview, you always need, when you're working with real data, to enter a context ID. The context ID is the parameter that the console, through a FlexCard action, is going to pass to the OmniScript. If the OmniScript is context-oriented, meaning that you need to modify an account, modify a case, modify a contact, or an opportunity, or a quote, you must put the record ID, Salesforce record ID of that object, of that record, okay, of that object type. And then once you put the context ID, you can click on this button to launch. It's called reset data. What is going to reset is the data JSON, or the JSON DOM that is on the right of this preview window. And on the preview window in the middle, you're going to see the result that a user will normally see. You can change the preview device to be a tablet, a phone, or a desktop, and you can also change the theme from Lightning to Newport for customized look and feel. Okay, templates. Now, the action debugger, the second tab that we see on the right, is going to have a list of all the actions with the parameters we send to the action and the parameters the action returns. So it's outstanding for troubleshooting. And meanwhile, we execute, the different steps that an OmniScript might have. We are going to be able to see this action debugger list increase. You can also clear the logs, and start from scratch. And you can also copy, either the request or the response. That is very useful to help you build up the data tools later on. That's best practice. So we are going to configure a simple OmniScript, right? We are going to design and build the basic structure of this OmniScript, identify the OmniScript elements and the element properties, identify the OmniScript JSON, what we call the JSON DOM, because the changes that you make on this business process are not going to be saved in Salesforce on an external system as you go immediately. They are going to be changed on this memory, on this JSON memory, and then once you go to the last actions, then it's going to be updated in Salesforce or outside. So configuring elements for getting the data and saving the data. In our case, we will use integration procedures, but we have a lot of other type of actions. And as I said earlier on, my navigate action is going to drive the user back to the console where he launched the OmniScript. Now, my card called Team Account Card is going to have a menu. This menu is going to deploy actions. One of these actions is going to be an OmniScript action that is going to launch the team edit account. Team is the type, edit account is the subtype of that OmniScript. Type of elements that we can have, the most important one, I would say, is a step. That makes the difference between a back-end process, like an integration procedure, and a front-end process, which is an OmniScript. The OmniScript has one step per page. So a step could be an equivalent of an HTML page. And then inside this step, we might have other components like radio buttons, like text elements, like selections, pictures, images, files. So lots of things. And then on the right, normally you have a chart of the steps that you have gone through and the steps that remains until you finished this OmniScript. You can also cancel the OmniScript, right? Or you can save it for later, in which case you will get a unique URL. And then when you execute this URL, you will continue from the place you left it, okay? With all the previous selections done. Those are other examples of input elements like date. You also have date and time, currency. You can have a lookup and look in an S object and a field. You can have a radio button, and the radio button does not need to be just bullet points. It could be with square boxes with text inside, or it could be with pictures. So that is always thinking about the UI, UX, user interface, user experience. You can also put those dates and amounts as read-only. So the user is going to see the results, but they are not going to be able to modify it. Now, in our simple OmniScript, we are going to have a set of requirements, and we are going to use a set of elements for resolving them. For example, we need a page for the interaction. We are going to achieve that with a step, which is from the element type group or category group. We need a name, right, for displaying to the user the name of the company. So that's going to be a text input. We're going to show also the telephone of this account. So that's going to be a telephone input. We need a website. So we're going to use a URL for this website. We want to separate lines, okay? Each field in a separate line, so we can use line breaks. And we need two integration procedures, one for getting the data and one for saving the data. And to complete the guided interaction and redirect the user, we will use to the console where he launched this OmniScript, we're going to use a navigate action. So this is the design, okay, that we are going to have. As I said earlier on, in my canvas, I'm going to drag and drop an integration procedure and step, another integration procedure, and a navigate action. And in the step inside it, I'm going to, of course, configure the label that will appear on the top and add three inputs, the name, the phone, and the website. And if I want those three to be separated, I can add line breaks into it. So the result of my design in preview will be something like that. Okay, I have the name of the company. You see that it's grayed out. This is because it is read-only. This phone, you see that there is a red star. That means it is required. And then the website is neither read-only or required. You don't see the progress of the OmniScript on the side or on the top because we have decided to hide it because we only have one step in this very simple OmniScript. When you will click next on this step, then it will get out of the step and it will execute the next action, which in our case is the integration procedure save. So in the script configuration element, we do have the type, we do have the subtype, and we do have the language, and those are the unique identifiers, as I said, and then the version number that is just indicating the number of version, and only one version can be active at a time. So it's quite important to set up properly the element names. They must be unique and they cannot have spaces, okay, or strange characters. Best practice, at least for actions, is to use Pascal case and verb object detail. For example, the integration procedure for getting data is called IP get account details. The one for saving is called IP save account details. However, for the names of the inputs, they must match with the output JSON path of the data source. So if my integration procedure is providing me an input, a JSON node called name, and I want that name to appear in this input must be called name. This is the label. Be careful, it's not the element name, but in the properties, I should make sure that this is name. Same thing for the phone and same thing for the website. They must match okay, the JSON node name that the data source is providing. And this fact of comparing and matching those two names is called parsing. And it's very important because a lot of sources of errors, okay, come from here, from not understanding this concept of parsing. Now, the account details, as I see, I'm going to have the placeholder Inc. as the name of the company in read-only. Then the phone is going to be required. And then I can use the control width also to give the relative size of that input compared to the entire line. So the entire line is 12. I am going to reduce that to 4. And I can change the look and feel from Lightning to Newport, and I will see a difference in the template. So we're going to create this edit account OmniScript as a demo, right? And as a summary, because I'm not going to come back to this slideshow, an OmniScript has many advantages. It is a drag and drop tool without or with very low code. It's a rapid prototyping because you can configure your OmniScript in minutes, right? And you can display that to your customers to see if they need more inputs, if they need a different look and feel, if they need another type of element. And it's very easy to troubleshoot meanwhile you are building it. It is of maintenance because it's declarative, so anybody knowing OmniScript technology can maintain it. Branching capability is built in. You can make every component conditional, either a step, a block inside a step, or inputs. And then you can integrate data from almost any source. You can use integration procedure, which is the most flexible data source, but you can also use data raptors or remote actions, which are Apex classes, or any other type of data source. And the look and feel, okay, the front end is separated from the back end, okay, from the data source and the data safe functionality. So I'm going to escape that presentation and I'm going to bring my org. I've already logged into the org and I've already gone to OmniScripts. And what I'm going to do is to create a brand new OmniScript. Now, this brand new OmniScript, I'm going to call it team account. The name is just the label, okay, of the version. And I'm going to reuse a type and a subtype that I've already used. Why? Because I don't want to create an isolated OmniScript. I want that OmniScript to replace an existing one and to show at the end that my console is calling the OmniScript that I am using here. So when I click save, because this type and this subtype and this language already exist, you will see that it's not going to give me a version 1. It's going to give me a version 3 or a version 4. I don't recall exactly how many versions I have already in my system. So it is loading. It takes some time to create a new OmniScript from time to time. And now you see that I have version 4. So that means that it has recognized that there was already an OmniScript with this type, subtype, and language. And that's why it has put a version 4. Now, in the new version of OmniStudio, when you add a new OmniScript, by default, it drags a step, right? This step has nothing inside. You can open it in the canvas and preview that there is nothing inside. And in the properties, in the build here, if you click on step, there's going to appear properties. And I can change the name. I'm going to call it a step account. And the name of this step is very important because it's going to build the JSON structure of the data. So my inputs are now going to be called a step account colon and the name of the input, right? I'm going to change my field label. So probably I'm going to call it edit account. And this label should appear into my canvas whenever it takes this change. And I'm going to go also to my setup. Yeah, that's updating now. I'm going to go to my setup, and in my setup, I'm going to do something. Setup is normally where you define the global characteristics of this OmniScript, not related to a single component. For example, reusable. If I mark this OmniScript as reusable, it will be added to the list of the OmniScript category, right? And you would be able to drag and drop this into other OmniScripts. What I'm going to do is scroll down until a section called Step Chart Options, and I'm going to hide the step chart because having a single step doesn't make sense to have the bullet points, with all the steps. And I'm going to come back to my build panel. And here in the list of 6 categories, I don't want to start opening the categories, okay, to see what I'm going to add. I can directly, on the search for element, write text, because I want to drag and drop a text element. It's not a text block, it is a text input that I want to drag and drop. And I'm going to drag and drop it inside my step. I cannot drag certain inputs or any input outside a step, because an input is to display information or to collect information. And once I have my text, I'm going to go back to build, and I'm going to find another one. For example, telephone. And as soon as I start typing telef, I already have the telephone. I'm going to add it, and I'm going to go back to build, and I'm going to choose now a URL. Those are the 3 inputs that I need inside my step. One for the name of the company, one for the telephone of the company, one for the website of the company, right? And once I have my 3 elements dragged and dropped, I'm going to click on the first, and I'm going to start configuring it. So when you click within one object, automatically it drives you to the properties of this element. I'm going to call that name, and I'm going to copy that name, and I'm going to paste it on the field label. Maybe on the field label, doesn't matter. I can call it account name if you want, because this is just a label. But this name is very important because this is what needs to match with the output JSON path that the data source brings into this step. Then I'm going to make that read-only. I don't want the user to change the account name with this OmniScript, so it becomes gray. The telephone, I'm going to call it phone. And again, this name, I'm going to make it match with exactly the name that comes from the data source. The label, I can call it account phone or whatever. I can put here account phone because I like it better than just phone, right? I'm going to delete the mask to be more flexible with that. And I'm going to go to the third. Oh, the account phone, probably I'm going to make it required. So you see the look and feel, right? That is going to change. It's going to drive an asterisk. And then my URL, I'm going to call it website. So website. And for the label, same as before, I'm going to put account website. Okay, and I'm not going to make it required or read only. If you want to do some changes in the GUI, you see I can modify the size. I can go to the previous one, modify as well the size and make it 4 units out of 12. And then I'm going to modify the first and I make it 4 units as well. So now I have the 3 elements in the same line. If I don't want that and I want them to be in different lines, I can use a line break. So I start typing line and I find a line break and I can drag and drop a line break in between those 2 components. And if I want, another line break between the first and the second. So you need to be very careful and just drop, the component whenever the blue line is positioned at the place that you want to drop that component. Okay. So now I can preview, but I will just see the skeleton. There would be no data. So what I'm going to do to save time is to go to build and now try to drag and drop an action that is going to bring data, that is going to save data. That action is going to be an integration procedure. So I start typing int. I close my step. Best practice when you want to drag elements outside a step is to minimize it so you can drag them on top or below. I'm going to drag 2 integration procedures, one on top to get data, one below to save data. Only problem is every time you drag an action, the step is displayed, is opened, right? So now that I have two integration procedures, I'm going to configure the first. As best practice for naming conventions, I told you that we were using Pascal case with the type of action, IP, and now verb object details. So I'm going to do get account details. Okay, that's the name. I am going to put also the same thing as the field label because I am going to see that label not for the user, not in preview, because this is an action outside the step, but for the action debugger. So if I want to follow my debug and I have lots of actions, I will see the label on it. And my integration procedure, thanks God, I have a team that have already prepared my integration procedure. It's called team get account details. Okay. Now I might need to configure the parameter that I'm sending to this integration procedure. If I want to check what is this integration procedure expecting, I can click on this link icon, and because I am in a console, it will open the integration procedure in a separate subtab, right? And in this subtab, I will see what parameter is the integration expecting and sending probably to a data raptor to extract the information. So I click on the data raptor get account details action on my integration procedure. And whenever he wants to reply, he will tell me I am expecting an account ID, and I'm going to pass it as a filter for the data raptor as account ID. So now I know that my team account is needing to send an account ID, right? And what I'm going to do, I know there is this context ID that I will have on preview. I'm going to use under remote properties, a parameter that is called extra payload, and I'm going to send account ID, and as a value, I'm going to send the percentage context ID, which is the parameter I'm getting from the action of the FlexCard, or the FlexCard is getting it from the console. So now I'm ready to preview, at least if the data is coming in. However, because I use real data, I need to copy my console record, my account record ID, which I have in another page, and I need to paste it on the context ID. So I paste that number. It should then reset data, or if it is working, I will leave it. No, it's not working. So I need to reset my data. And now hopefully I will get my 3 fields populated for my accounts. Let's see if I have my Acme account populated. It is a little slow, but I got it. I have the name of my account. I've got my number, and I've got my website. And pay attention to one thing. My data raptor through the integration procedure has provided me 4 fields: the ID, the name, the website, and the phone. However, 3 of them have been inserted into the node called step account, which is the name of the step. Why is that? Because when it does parsing, when it matches, it's going to take the fields that are inside that step, and it's going to put them inside the step in the JSON structure. So whenever now I need to move that data and pass it to an integration procedure safe, I will need to send a step account colon name, step account colon website, step account colon phone. Yeah. So I'm going to go back to design. And I'm going to configure now my integration procedure save, because I am getting the data, but I don't know if I am saving the data properly. I'm going to call that integration procedure. So IP save account details, and I'm going to copy and paste that into the label. And I'm going to call also an integration procedure that somebody prepared for me that is called team_save account details. And again, I can open that integration procedure to see what is needed for that integration procedure. This integration procedure is going to have internally a data raptor, and the data raptor is going to need some input for saving the data into Salesforce, right? So I have a data raptor action that is passing the data into the data raptor, and same thing as before, I can click on this clip that will appear here, and that will open my data raptor. I am just doing that because I want to know which parameters do I need to send to this integration procedure in order to save my data properly. What I need to send is what the data raptor is expecting as input JSON, right? And whenever this wants to load, I am going to go to the tab that is called Fields, and I'm going to see the mappings. And if I go to Fields now, I see that I'm writing into the account object. And if I go to Fields, I click on Fields, I see that the data raptor load is expecting account ID, plus, you see that is the entire path. Step account, the name of my step, colon name. Step account, colon phone, step account, colon website. So I need to send everything inside the step plus the parameter account ID. So let's go back to my OmniScript. And in my OmniScript, I am going to make sure that in my data JSON, I send the account ID. I can do it with remote properties, but I'm going to do it in a different way now. I'm going to filter send JSON path is a filter, and I'm going to put here step accounts, right? So with that, I'm going to send the 3 variables that are inside the step account. And now I'm going to use the remote properties to add my extra payload. So my extra payload, as before, it was going to be account ID, that is the parameter that it is expected by the data raptor, and then percentage context ID. I could use context ID, or I can use ID, because ID is the parameter that is retrieved by the integration procedure get account details, right? So I could use any of the 2 merge variables. And now I go to preview. And now it should re-execute, and I'm going to test that my data is being saved. And I'm going to test that I change a telephone number or I change my website, and I'm going to see if that works properly. So I'm initializing, or the system is getting the data from Salesforce, and I'm going to do a small change, either on the phone or on the website, or maybe on both. So I'm going to change that 1111, and then maybe Acme 11. And I'm going to click next. That will finish my OmniScript. I'm going to just click refresh again to load the data again and verify that this 2222 has been changed to 1111 in the phone, and effectively it works perfectly. So last thing to do is go back to design, and once I have tested my OmniScript, I'm going to add a navigate action just to navigate. I put navig, and I'm going to drag and drop a navigate action below my integration procedure save. Now this navigate action, I need just to put the object API name, which is account. I already have the context ID as the record ID. That's fine. I am eventually going to replace the tab, okay, that is the OmniScript tab, with the console tab. And now once I have finished adding my navigate action, I'm going to activate that version. So activating that version is going to build up the Lightning Web Component, and is going to replace the previous version. That was version 3. This is version 4. And the last thing I'm going to do when this Lightning Web Component is created and activated is go to my console and launch the OmniScript from my console. So sometimes it takes time because it's building the 4 files that compose the Lightning Web Component, the XML file, HTML file, JavaScript, and CSS. And it needs to deploy them, and it needs to publish them. You can also decide how you want to publish, because you can add this OmniScript directly into a web page, a record page, home page, app page. So you can do that in Lightning App Builder. So you can publish this OmniScript in Lightning App Builder or even in Community Builder. Okay. And once it is deployed, I will go to my console, and then I will show you how to launch this OmniScript from my action. So finishing up. This is one of the caveats of this latest version that is working with Lightning Web Components. The good news is that it's doing everything for you behind the scenes, and you don't need to complicate your life playing and manipulating those files. The system is doing them for you. Okay, so I click now Done, and I go to my console, and from my console, I'm going to click on my action. I'm going to click on Edit Account, and that is going to launch a subtab with my OmniScript. And this OmniScript, I'm going to change something like the phone or the website. I'm going to put it back to 2222, and then this 22, and I click Next. And now my navigate action will take place, and boom, I'm coming back to my console. I'm going to refresh the console just to check that this 1111 has been changed by 2222 again in my console. It is taking a long time today, loading all those components. Normally it's much quicker. But that's, the thing when you are doing a demo, and even this demo is not live, is recorded. That's it. So I hope you have enjoyed this session. There would be a second part with a little bit more advanced topics on OmniScript as well. And I hope you're there. So come on, my console. I see that the phone now is 2222, and then my URL is acme22.com. And this is executing also in another card, some weather data. So that is to simulate an API query, okay, from this FlexCard. So thanks a lot, and see you soon in the next session. I'm going to stop recording now.